Hello and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. It is such an honor to talk to the man who my school's building was named after. I'm a proud graduate of South Prairie Early College High School, and the building that holds those early college students was named after our guest today, Dr. Vern Alexander.
It's a pleasure to be here today. These are a number of awards that I've received throughout my lifetime. This is probably the Bronze Star when I was in the military in Vietnam. Probably one of the most prestigious military awards that you can receive. I also received the Army Accommodation Medal while I was in Vietnam, and was blessed to also be considered as the most outstanding soldier in my battalion. This is Administrator of the Year. I was awarded that in 1991, and the very next year was awarded also Administrator of the Year. Mr. Garcia, who was my assistant principal and later became a principal at South Prairie, said I was the first African-American principal employed at South Prairie. I never gave that any thought until he told me that. If I had to have a hero, certainly Dr. King was my hero when I grew up in the 1960s. A great person is a person that makes life better for people. He made life better for America. To me, that's the sense of greatness.
So you are a Dalworth native. What was the Dalworth community like back then, and how is it different now?
I was born in Sigerville, Texas, and actually my family moved to Grand Prairie. My dad was looking for employment, and he got on at General Motors. And so he moved the family to Grand Prairie. Grand Prairie back then certainly was different from the way it is now. Certainly it was a segregated community. Dalworth was 100% black. The teachers were 100% black. So that is because it was doing what we call the segregated era, you know. In history, they talk about from about 1860s to about 1954, the segregated era. And so that is the way it was. We had a great time. As African Americans, we had outstanding football teams, outstanding basketball team. Many of the guys that I went to school with, Charlie Taylor, Perry Pruitt, Joe, all of them made it to the pros. I mean, we had some outstanding athletes, and those that didn't make it were also outstanding. It's just that they didn't get the opportunity to display that talent beyond high school. I certainly had the opportunity to play football and enjoyed athletics. We played in a field called Prairie Park, okay, separate from the Go for Warrior Bowl that we have now. The community has certainly changed. It's a more diverse community now. We have a lot of Hispanic families that have moved into the Dalworth area, and so that certainly has led to a different makeup of the school, which is, you know, now is Daniels Elementary, and it was named for my high school principal, David Daniels, during the entire time that I was in school. That diversity certainly is a positive for our community. The cultural exchange, I think, among the African American student and the Hispanic student is positive for both groups. You learn from both, and I certainly hope that they are learning the language of both groups, so it will enhance them as citizens as they grow older.
So my grandfather was in the Vietnam War, and my dad mentioned how he would talk about things like Puff the Magic Dragon or raisin bread, which was actually just bugs in the bread. So what was your experience like during the war?
The war itself, varied. I went in Cameron Bay in Vietnam, and certainly during the day I went in, it was battle going on. I mean, bombs were blasting the very day that I got there. The Vietnam War, serving in the military, gave us an opportunity to, I guess, the military is to travel. I think the exposure in the military, and I know you're gonna, is very good, because I said that the 2 years in the military was just as educational as 4 years of undergraduate school. So that tells you what I feel about it. I compare those 2 years as being just as gratifying as the 4 years that I spent in undergraduate school.
So what was the overall experience for African Americans in the military? Were they accepted?
What you'll have to look at is the two groups. The young white soldiers were very receptive towards the young black soldiers. I guess you could say there was excellent communication between us as young soldiers and the young white soldiers. Where we did get into some conflict is older white soldiers that did not want any changes to occur. African American soldiers were becoming so much aware of the civil rights movement, the how do I want to say, the new dress and fashion, the afro, the dashiki, all of that certainly was taking place as part of the culture. So it was part of our experience also as soldiers. And so young white soldiers did not have a problem with that at all. Older career white soldiers did have a problem with it. A lot of times when we entered discussions about racial issues, sometimes they did not take it as positive as the young white soldiers would.
There were often challenges for soldiers returning from the war. What was your reciprocation when you got back from the war?
We were not well received when we got back from the military from Vietnam because it was such an unpopular war. It was many soldiers when they returned could not find jobs when they returned. The community did not embrace us upon our return. And so certainly that was an experience that that was tough for our soldiers. I talked to some soldiers that returned and they had been back for as many as 5 years and they still couldn't find employment. So when I could not find employment, I decided the VA, okay, was very good, that I would go and use my VA bill and go to graduate school. So that was kind of what I said, is if you can't find a job and you got the benefits, then take advantage of that. So that's what I used to go on to graduate school, because I couldn't find employment. And I'm gonna tell you, it was a blessing in disguise.
So there are certain instances where African Americans are touted as being unpatriotic. What would you say to that?
I would say that when people say that young soldiers being unpatriotic is blacks being unpatriotic, is that they have a limited knowledge of history. Certainly, even during the Boston Massacre, the first person to die was an African American. African Americans have really thought by serving in the military that it would prove that they was patriotic to our country. And as I said, Frederick Douglass was the main leader during the Civil War, or after the Civil War. It was actually during the Civil War. He wanted black soldiers to prove that they were willing to die for America, and he felt like that by us enlisting in the military, that it would show our patriotism, and therefore the United States government would give us rights, and we would benefit as a result of that. So in every war throughout history, every war in American history, blacks have shown their willingness to die in the hopes that it would improve their status in America.
So would you recommend the military for a young man or woman today?
The military gave me the opportunity to travel in parts of the world that I would never have seen. And that experience of going to those different parts of the world certainly is embedded in my mind. That experience I've never forgotten. And so I would say to any young person, it certainly provides you an opportunity to learn and to travel. It also provides you a great opportunity to get your finance in order when the government pays for everything, even your clothing, even what you eat. So I certainly saved a lot of money because I didn't have to pay for anything. I think that the military is one of the best employers when you talk about equal opportunity. I think they are one of the best. Now, I have to say that that in any military engagement, there is the chance that a person can lose their life. Okay, but I'm going to tell you, is that before I went to Vietnam, I talked to every soldier that had served, and I learned every aspect of the war from those veterans that had already been there, so I knew what to expect and how to stay alive.
Going back to your childhood, you mentioned how schools were still segregated. What was that like, and how did African Americans feel about integration?
I was a young boy, and I was aware of the 1954 Supreme Court decision on integration and segregation. I was well aware of that as an elementary school student, and thought that the opportunity would present itself in order for me to go to an integrated school. However, that didn't take place. The 54 decision, I graduated in '64, and schools still had not been integrated here in Grand Prairie. In fact, it was probably, I think, around '67, somewhere along in there, when they began to be integrated. I thought that integration was a great thing.
So you went on to be a teacher in GPISD. How different was GPISD from when you were a student versus when you were a teacher?
I started teaching at Adams Middle School. That was my first job, teaching 8th grade history and 7th grade Texas history. Certainly by that time, integration had taken place, and the school classroom was made up of a lot of different ethnic groups, okay? White, black, Hispanic. And I thought that was culturally beneficial for all of our students. Certainly the teaching staff was integrated, and thought that was an excellent opportunity for the different key students to see adults in their role and have that impact. There are many, some of our teachers that taught at Daniels or at Dillard were employed at the schools that I was teaching at. Mr. Morton had taught 6th grade at Daniels, and he was at Adams as a teacher when I went there. And so Sally Moore had also been a teacher, and she was a counselor. So that opportunity for all of the kids to come together, so not only do you have the students coming together, you got the adults coming together as well. And so it gave Grand Prairie a chance to grow and become a, what they call it, become or work towards becoming a all-American city, okay? And so certainly, to me, that's a significant growth for the city of Grand Prairie.
So you often said that education is the great equalizer. Could you elaborate on that a little more?
Dr. King once said that education provides a person with the information to decipher an abundance of information. Okay, just let's think about that. It helps you to be able to take a lot of information, decipher it, and come up with an adequate decision. When you have a good education, most employers are looking for the best person. Okay? And regardless of one ethnic background, ethnic group, if you are the best at what you do, okay, and that's your goal, is to be the very best. And if you are the best, then there is no way that your employer is going to pass up the opportunity to put you in a position. Education just helps to level the playing field. Without an education, it puts you at risk of forever being behind. I once read this. I read it. It says this: the man who starts off behind in the great race of life shall forever remain behind unless he runs faster than the man in front of him. And so that is the goal, is to always excel. And that's one of the reasons that I lost a lot of sleep in graduate school, because I felt like that I had grounds to make up, and I didn't want to waste the opportunity of not making up that ground. And that's the reason I read so much now, is because I just feel like that education just helps to give you so much of an advantage when you approach a given issue, when you're trying to deal with life.
So speaking of education, you are a proud graduate of Jarvis College. What motivated you to want to go to Jarvis?
My brother, who had graduated from high school 2 years prior to me graduating, had gone to Jarvis Christian College, and he told me of the different events and the fun that he had at Jarvis as a student. And when he told me those stories that he encountered and the fun that he had in being a student at Jarvis, I thought, hey, this is the place that I want to go. And it paid out very nicely. Unfortunately, the year that I arrived at Jarvis, they cut out all athletics for financial reasons. And the only way that you could get known on the campus is that you made the honor roll or the dean's list. Okay? And they had assemblies honoring not athletes, but honoring academic achievement. And so to me, that was very fortunate to have gone to Jarvis at that specific time. Athletics is back at Jarvis, but that gave me a focus on academics. And that was the reason that I went, because of my brother's influence.
So you have a doctorate degree, which is such a feat to accomplish. What was your motivation to get that degree, and what were the challenges that you encountered?
The motivation to get the doctor's degree is a result of my admiration for Dr. King. I just thought Dr. King's life and what he represented and how he was able to use his doctor's degree in order to galvanize the community, or galvanize the, let's say, society at large. He was able to bring together all aspects of society, all religious groups, ethnic groups, and because of his ability to do that, and his having a doctor's degree, I thought, because I admired him so much, then I said I would not rest until I had a doctor's degree, just like Dr. Martin Luther King. I thought that education would help me also be able to make a contribution to society, just like he made such a significant contribution.
You mentioned how much you like diversity and the cultural exchange that it can bring. What do you think are the benefits to that cultural exchange?
That cultural exchange helps to build trust. When we were segregated, then there was a lack of trust. When we know about each other and we learn about each other, we communicate with each other, then it begins building the relationship. And when you build the relationship, then you build the trust. Okay? And that was the most significant part of the diversity, is building trust among the various ethnic groups. That was the most important benefit of integration here in Grand Prairie.
So you have over 40 years in education and have served as a superintendent for many years. What are your keys to a successful career?
I think that some of the most important thing is building relationship with the community. People have to trust you. The parents have to trust you. And so when you build that relationship with the community and with parents, then you have that sense of trust. Parents will trust you when they feel that you have their child's best interests in mind. And so my career has come along, I guess, I'm going to say, because I've always felt that students ought to be treated with respect. Okay? I had high expectations for my students, but I always wanted to treat them with respect. And when they broke a rule, I addressed that rule. I addressed that with that student, and when I saw the student the next time, we clear. We forget about that where he broke the rule, and we move forward. I never kept a grudge against a kid, okay? Because he is a kid or she is a kid, and they are trying to grow. So you give them a clean slate, you address it, and you move on. Okay, that to me, that's so important in building trust with students.
And you can see the rapport you've built with your students with these many awards that you've gotten from schools. What inspires you to work with children and in education?
You could always say what inspired me, probably having good educators in my life. Certainly was probably the influence that led me to want to work with kids. I'm going to say Melrose Moore, that I had as a 6th grade teacher. I'm going to say Dr. Lanier, who was my English teacher at Jarvis College. How she took me and embraced me and took me home and tutored me. How my young professors, I had some young white professors at the University of North Texas that really walked with me and taught me. Even at Jarvis, I had young history professors. They walked with me and taught me. They were so significant in my life, in the sense of their fairness and, I would say, the zest for research in the truth. I'll say this. I often say, don't waste a student's time. I don't want my time wasted. Don't waste a student's time teaching them what they already know. I don't want, that was a waste of my time. When I went to class at the university, I didn't want them to present stuff I already know. I come to class, you teach me something that I'm not aware of. And so I thought that is the essence of education. That, to me, that's what education is about.
Dr. Alexander, it's been such an insightful and inspiring time with you today. Thank you for sitting down with us.
It's been my pleasure to visit with you. I've enjoyed sharing this time with you.